Module 2 of the Ideas in Practice strand, Investigating Variability from the Ground Up. Again, my name is Bill Wilmot. Please reach out if you have any questions or thoughts that you'd like to share as you're going through this strand. This will help me as I am designing subsequent modules. My email address is bwilmot@cas.org. In this module, we're going to bring together our strengths and areas of growth as learning designers and an investigation of learner variability to lay the groundwork for some thoughtful design and reflection over the course of the year. First, we're going to share artifacts that we brought, which represent an area of strength and our next area of growth as learning designers. Second, we are going to investigate learner variability from the ground up by looking at how learners respond to the options we give them. Before we get started, bring up the Module 2 links document so that you can easily access all of the right documents and videos. All right, here's the big reveal. Pull out your artifact representing strengths and areas of growth in your design practice. Pause here and take a moment to share with your colleagues why you chose the artifacts you did. What do you see as your areas of strength and areas of growth? Remember, as I'm sure I don't need to remind you, some people feel vulnerable when sharing strengths and areas of growth, so this is a great opportunity to support your colleagues in their self-reflection and professional growth. Okay, pause here and have the conversation. Welcome back. So research has shown that publicly setting goals and reflecting on learning helps guide and focus future learning. That's why we're doing this. So next, we will start to think about how you plan on using your strengths for your learners and how you can focus on areas of growth throughout your design work. An essential step in the design process, as we all know, is to try out your design. In education, we often don't have the luxury of then going back to redesign the same lesson, but have to move on. Can you imagine how bored students would get if you kept teaching the same lesson over and over in new ways? More on how to solve that problem in a minute. This iterative process helps us refine our practice and learn about our students at the same time. We're going to pursue both of those avenues in this module, understanding learner variability from the ground up and discussing how we feed what we know about learner variability back into our future design work. Let's first look at learner variability. As you know, the research about learner variability is built into the UDL guidelines. If we use these to design, we're already designing for a wide range of learners. A crucial next step, though, is to look at the particular individuals engaged in a learning design. You can see variability best in just looking at the options that students choose in the course of a lesson. Take a moment to remind yourself of how learners responded to your learning moment in the learner variability reflection. What options did they choose? What's your hypothesis on why? Is there something about how each of them engages, how they connect with representations of information, or that how they tend to express what they know that you noticed from this? Go down a list of your students and write down what you noticed about each student. Pause here, write this down in the linked document, and share a few clear examples with your colleagues. Welcome back. Now, remember, when making these observations, it is important not to classify students as this or that kind of learner. Learners are different in all the contexts in which they're learning, during the play, on the soccer field, in math class versus social studies. We need to be careful not to overgeneralize. Here's a link to a fascinating conversation with Howard Gardner, talking about how multiple intelligences often gets misinterpreted and oversimplified as students having one particular learning style to the exclusion of others. So remember, we're really just making an observation about this one situation, which may give us clues as to what kinds of options to provide in the future. So, how do we integrate feedback from our design trial without repeating lessons over and over and over? We have two options. We could find ways to try it out with a dry run ahead of time, or we can take what we learned from student reaction, engagement, and learning, and use that to make changes to our next lesson. In fact, it might be best to do both. Many of you have now learned the tool of journey mapping. This is a great way to do a dry run, to anticipate barriers and imagine how your learners might engage. You could do a short journey map on your own or with a colleague. You can also use the UDL experience inquiry as a reflection guide with a colleague. This is just a structured way to describe the lesson design and open the door for feedback. Next, you want to think about how to gather feedback from your learners to inform the design of your next lesson. The key is really to pay careful attention to what students do and what they say when presented with options for approaching their work. Contextual inquiry and cognitive labs are two tools from the user experience design world. Of course, the context of the classroom is so unique, so I've created versions of these that you could potentially use in your classroom. Click out to find the contextual inquiry in the classroom and cognitive labs in the classroom. Try them out. Tell me what you think. Here's one place I need some design feedback myself to see if these are useful to you. So, what clues did you take away in looking at how learners responded to the learning moment that gave you ideas about further options that you could provide? I always have to remind myself not to pigeonhole students in this process. My goal is not to figure out who would be most likely to use a book on tape, but to make that option available to everyone if there's even one person who might use it. Pause here and talk with your colleagues about what options you might provide based on what you noticed. So, the big idea from this module is that we can see learner variability in the classroom when we pay attention to how learners engage with our learning designs. We can use this learner feedback for future design. So you'll see over the course of this strand that we will pursue two paths in parallel, reflecting on our own practice as designers by examining how our designs are playing out with our students. All right, next steps.
For today's deliverable, don't forget to upload pictures or copies of your artifacts that you brought today, representing areas of strength and areas of growth as a designer.
For our reflection meeting this month, choose a lesson that you're designing anyway. Include some options for students in terms of how they engage, how information is represented, or how they express their learning. Take that opportunity to try out one way of gathering feedback from students. This could include the contextual inquiry, the cognitive lab, the learner variability feedback tool, or just asking students to write down what option they chose and why. I'm eager to hear more about how this goes. Finally, for our next module, we're going to focus in on expert learning. Specifically, we will look more deeply at being a purposeful learner, exploring what this means for ourselves and for our students. There's nothing in particular that you have to do to prepare, but be ready to talk about why you chose to become an educator. Thank you. Thanks for joining this module, and I'll see you next time.